So welcome to the Global Discussion, discussions with creatives, leaders and thinkers. I'm Simon Hodgkins, and today I'm joined by Eveline Ruehlin. Eveline, you're very welcome to the podcast. Let's begin by asking you to maybe introduce yourself, a little bit about your journey, what you do, what you focused on, to our worldwide audience today. So over to you, Eveline.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored. I have a lifetime of experience in business, and I have to go back to what I'm doing right now. I have to go back 12 years. That really sort of jump-started me into this AI, fashion tech, and many other interests of mine. But it goes back when I actually had the first e-commerce website 12 years ago in 2010. And with hyperlinks, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, social media. So I was in Web 2, and I'm now going into Web 3. I have a consulting firm I started last year, First Continental Consulting, and my main focus is with the generation Z, Gen Zs, and the future of business and the future in general. So going back again, I learned so much. I was so fascinated, and I was taking marketing classes at Georgetown University. I told myself, I'm a digital immigrant. I got to learn something. I got to know what's going on with social media, with e-commerce and so forth. And I took this class. And because of that class, I was involved with a woman from Project Runway. And we started this website. And it just, I didn't have, I wasn't, no supply chain in place. Of course, I didn't know it was going to take off. So anyhow, the production wasn't in place properly, and we couldn't produce enough at the time. And it was brand new. People didn't know what this was. And I did it with PayPal. You could pay online. It was great. It was a fascinating experience. And fast forward, the pandemic hit, and I abandoned that project because of some sad situation that occurred with my partner in the firm, in this website endeavor in fashion. And so when the pandemic hit, I decided, I got to start learning about AI. And I took some data science classes. And I started influencing online. And here I am. I am influencing in fashion tech and AI and Web3 and the metaverse. And yes, that's basically my story. I have a lifetime of experience in business in general. I've worked for the US government. I worked at international organizations at the United Nations in New York, and at the IMF. So I have a little banking experience there too. I have an economics background. I grew up in Switzerland, and I was a nose for La Maison Firmenich in Geneva. While I was going to school as a student, I learned how to be a nose. And I can only praise Firmenich for learning about a company culture that is very successful in today's world as well. They're one big team, and everybody, it's a dynamic situation, and people are also the employee experience is fantastic there. So anyhow, I just had to veer off into my background a little bit, and I thought that was interesting to mention about the nose thing. And I didn't stay there very long because I got an offer to work at the United Nations in New York, because I have a linguistic background as well, and that's where I am now, still in the US. I had a fabulous life of most interesting jobs. Let's put it that way.
Eveline, I love that. That's a wonderful, wonderful journey. So thank you so much for sharing that with me and with our audience. That's wonderful. From the nose to Washington to to United Nations, fashion tech, everything in between. Oh, and by the way, I was doing e-commerce before most people knew what it was, and now, of course, you're advising people and you're speaking out about this new sort of phase of technology, this Web3 as it's been coined or termed, and all the wonderful and sometimes a little bit scary AI technology developments that are with us today and developing at a rapid pace. So I want to ask you a couple of questions, if I can, just about what we've touched on there. When you, because obviously you're coming from a really solid Web2 place, you had a business, it was overly successful really in lots of ways. And you were talking about supply chain there and all the challenges of growing a business when it sort of goes very quickly, and maybe people weren't expecting it. But we also saw web crashes, we saw technology crashes, we've seen booms and busts. We're in a very new situation now, of course, because now we have AI. You mentioned metaverse, and you mentioned sort of this new Web3. So what do you think is fundamentally different now, Eveline, compared to then, Web2? What do you see as the main benefits that businesses have now with this new world?
Well, I see AI as augmenting people's work, augmenting doing tedious work everything can be sped up now, and you can do a lot by yourself, and you have AI doing all kinds of automation. The digital transformation is really happening, and there are fabulous tools out there to help you as a small business, like with no code, if you're like a digital immigrant like I am, or just very low code. Definitely advise people to get their knowledge on AI now in business, get in the game now, and you will definitely succeed. It'll help you. It alleviates a lot of tedious work, and I only see an upside. Getting in the game now. Now is the time.
Yeah, we've seen, haven't we, some very large organizations investing heavily in AI technology and really trying to bolt it on or integrate it with what they have already. Ones that spring to mind recently at the time of recording is Microsoft's proposed investment in AI, and how that will fundamentally impact things, and trying to be a little bit ahead of the curve. And it's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? Get involved now. Don't wait for this to pass you by, because it feels like a step change, almost like a revolution, almost like an industrial revolution, I should say, is sort of happening right now. It feels like that to me anyway. What's your take on the current scenario?
Absolutely. We are in the fourth industrial revolution. It's absolutely fantastic what's happening. Very exciting times. I see it that way. I have a very positive outlook. I just wish that the legislation was not lagging so far behind. Technology is outpacing legislation in major ways, and we need to really do something about AI ethics. There are law firms that are getting heavily involved. I just I saw something about Aaron Fox. They're I think a lot of law firms are getting involved with the metaverse now as well, and are getting more digitally savvy. But legislation, the we have Europeans have a lot of AI, privacy and security legislation, and we adopted sort of the California cybersecurity laws as well, and U.S. Congress is working on AI, finalizing on some more AI legislation, but it's way behind from my standpoint. And most of the industry leaders are looking to the EU and the US to get proper legislation for governance, for business governance put in place. It's really urgent.
Yeah, I agree completely, because you mentioned California, for example, as earlier adopters, I suppose, than maybe other states, and the EU, of course, with GDPR regulations, and then you roll into that the AI ethics regulations and compliance, and then you've kind of got the UK since Brexit. I don't like to use that term too often, but since Brexit, they're now proposing their own, like a new set of UK regulations as well. And I know in the US, there are a number of states now. I think it's 8 or 9 states, or maybe it's 12. I'm not sure on the exact number, but there are a number of states that are sort of implementing their own versions of regulations. But there seems to be a lot of work to do there. You're completely right. I think it's a great point that you raise.
The OECD has a great proposal out there, and they're working together with the EU. I know about that. I love what their guidelines look like at this stage in time. So I'm not an expert on it, but I just watch. I think we all need to look into this, because AI ethics is crucial, especially with Chat GPT. I mean, it writes your story and everything else. Someone's got to look at the ethics, and it has to be embedded in the software. I don't know where Google and OpenAI and Microsoft, what exactly they're doing as far as AI ethics, but this needs to just be urgently addressed. It's technology is truly outpacing everything.
Well, I think to some degree, technology has always outpaced regulations, and then regulations and governments catch up. But I think the step change, the seed change, that industrial revolution, 4.0, whatever you want to call it, it's really pushing it out a long way. And there's an awful gap when it comes to AI ethics, AI regulations. And we're still talking about Web 2.0 privacy regulations at the moment, and the world is moving on rapidly. So I think that's a great point that you raised. The question I wanted to come back to, though, it's kind of died down a little bit now, but there was a lot of discussions between, is it going to be a VR world, an AR world? And you talked a little bit about AI augmenting the work that we do and doing a lot of the heavy lifting. When you think about the metaverse, at the time of recording, Davos has just happened. There was some metaverse discussions taking place with people virtually experiencing conversations, whether you like Davos or not. I'm just making the point that sort of metaverse environment, like what are your views on this, Eveline?
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry for interjecting. I got a little excited there. I love to ski. I actually was a ski racer as a kid, so growing up in Switzerland. So yeah, and Davos has one of the longest slopes. I just needed to interject that there is one run that's about 3 hours long. It's fabulous. So anyhow, going back to Davos, yes, I love what they're doing. I like to call it more Web3. It's a huge focus always calling it metaverse. Yes, we're getting there, if it's going to be called metaverse or whatever it's going to be called. But I love what Dr. Martha Buckenfield was doing with through spatial. You could actually listen in. I listened I didn't have much time yesterday, but I did listen in a little bit. I think it's fascinating. It's a wonderful educational journey. It's experiential. I truly love it. Yes, we need to address all these issues. We also need to address the underprivileged world and how the metaverse fits into a more decentralized opportunity for all. And I think I haven't listened to all of the sessions up at the WEF, but I think they're addressing it by via climate change, SDGs, and yeah, to help the underprivileged and the underserved. So I think they're doing a great job in many respects. Yeah, I can only say good things about it, what I've seen so far.
Okay, thank you, Eveline. And I suppose the other thing I was going to ask you, because we can't really have a Web3 conversation until we bring up the term blockchain, crypto, micropayments, the future of, the future of transactions. How do you think that's going to impact businesses? Because the crypto markets, they've been on a roller coaster, right? They grew, they dropped a little bit, they massively exploded, and now they've dropped significantly again. And yet there's some underlying fundamental technology that's playing part in that Web 3.0 world that you're referring to. How does that impact the kind of conversations you're having around tech?
I think, yeah, for businesses, the blockchain offers so many fabulous opportunities. I think from a supply chain point of view, definitely fabulous opportunities, and it keeps it, yeah, how you can actually follow the source of a product all the way, whether you tag an NFT on it or not. But I think it's great to have that tag to know where things are sourced. And I hear from the manufacturing and in the supply chain, it's definitely fabulous for those two industries.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's great. And I know that skiing is a passion, and that the ski slope that you mentioned there, Davos, I know there was a lot of complaints that they moved the date of Davos, and people were complaining it was too cold. But yeah, there's some fabulous skiing for sure. But let me move it on a little bit, Eveline, if I can, because I also want to talk a little bit about your own reading. You mentioned a lot of government bodies maybe that you've worked for, a lot of associations and global networks that you're part of.
Yeah.
And obviously you have to read a lot. You're constantly studying, you're understanding things. If you're speaking as an influencer in this area and you're advising individuals and companies on this, you have to take on board a lot of information. So what kind of things do you like to read? Do you read purely for business? Is it, is this area what you're constantly consuming? Are you an audiobook person, a written book person? Do you read for pleasure? How does that learning style work for you and that reading?
I am actually very old-fashioned. I love books. Well, actually, I have several books I can suggest to. I love to read. And I also love to do research, and I go to the Library of Congress. I live up on the hill, and I truly love to be ensconced into like this world of books and words. I've done some interesting research, and I was involved with a book on saboteurs way back on German saboteurs. It was in the early 2000s. I helped write a book on, it was illegal. It was used for legal purposes afterwards, and a textbook as well. But I found the best documents at the Library of Congress. Nobody ever found. It was just fascinating what happened during World War II. And yeah, there is now a podcast, I believe, out with MSNBC. Rachel Maddox is doing something along those lines. I'm not sure whether she is actually talking about those saboteurs, the German saboteurs that came over. But anyhow, yes, that's another story. I love to go to the library and read, but I also love to just lounge on a couch and read for myself. But currently for business, I have several books. I'm still reading, but it's a Tim Hughes book. It's fabulous. I mean, it's about also networking, and he stresses how important it is with social media and everything. It's still important to, like we are doing by Zoom, we are meeting. People are driving this whole thing. This whole metaverse is driven by people and connections. And this is a great book about, but you'll love that. I totally love it. It's more for sales and marketing, but I am in marketing. I truly love it. I think it's fantastic. Then I have one that's more, this is giving for all the women out there in the world. I just read this by Lucia Cantor. It's a fantastic book, The Forces of Good, and it's great on everyday negotiation. Anybody should be reading this, but it's from a woman's standpoint written, but it's fantastic. And she actually draws her own pictures in here. It's truly enjoyable. This is more like, it's not a business book per se, but it's more of a self-improvement. It's a great one.
And the title of that one again, Eveline, sorry?
Oh, The Forces of Good.
The Forces of Good, thank you. Okay.
Instead of a Superman on the cover. Then, I love Cashless by Richard Turin, about the digital assets and digital currency. That's fabulous as well. I love what happened to China after the normalization, the banking normalization. America did actually. I give credit to America for starting this whole huge boom in China. But Richard is not talking about he's basically talking about the digital yuan, and he is doing a fantastic job. As far as technical, how technology is leading a purpose-driven business. This came out 2 years ago by Theo Lau. She's a friend of mine from, I know her through Twitter and LinkedIn. And Bradley Limer wrote this together. They're both in finance, and it's an excellent book called Beyond Good, and it's absolutely fantastic. Then I have one more, and I will be quiet. I love this. This brings us into through Web3 metaverse. This is the extended reality in practice, and this is excellent. I know I'm doing this out, they're not paying me, but I love these books. I'm passionate about learning. And there's one more I love about Ray Wong. I said the last one, but this is absolutely last one. Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It's about big tech. It's an excellent book, and it brings you into today's world as well. But he wrote this, I think, 2 years ago as well. So there we go.
Eveline, that's wonderful. I love, though, I actually know a couple of those authors myself, and the knowledge and the insights and the research that they've put into some of those publications, it definitely needs the time to go in and understand the messages that are coming out. So thank you. And I agree, Tim Hughes will love your advert. So I agree. That's nice. And also nice to hear about a library. You know, I like to go to the library, you know.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I personally just there's nothing more I love to do. Seriously, I shouldn't even say that. I'm such a nerd, but I am so happy when I'm in a library, and especially the Library of Congress. Gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful buildings in Washington, D.C.
It sure is.
I mean, it's fabulous. Yeah, Tim Hughes, I have to give him credit. And maybe you were going to ask that. I have to give him credit. Early on when I started influencing, I told myself I knew nothing, but I did tell him about my e-commerce experience and while I was at Georgetown University, and he thought that was unique, and he said, just do what you feel you want to do, like go with your intuition. He reinforced that in me. I have to say, I give him a lot of credit. What has happened in the last 2 years.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of good research, and he's putting out a lot of good information about that, the changes and the way that behavior, particularly buying behavior, in his latest book, and you know, social selling obviously being the title, but you know, how buyers, and I suppose what's the term he uses, change makers, and how
Yes.
you know, how you influence that. And you know, if you look into the work that he's doing, he's got a lot of thought process has gone into that. So yeah,
It's actually a
yeah,
textbook.
yeah.
Definitely for university studies. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you brought me right back to when I was in college, university, and going to the library to do the research, because there was no iPhone. I don't talk about that very often, but I kind of love that too. I miss that a little bit. So maybe I need to go and visit a few libraries again a little bit more.
Simon, I hope we can encourage young people to do it too. I mean, Gen Zs, they're our future, and they love to do things in group, and they're all about self-identity in digital spaces, digital and physical, and that's all real to them. But I think they would love the library as well. I think that we hit on something here.
Yeah, well, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. It's a great answer. And the other thing I want to ask you as well, just moving away from books maybe, but onto people that you admire. So when you look back over your career, everything that you've been involved in, people that you've met, who do you admire? Who's inspired you along the way, Eveline?
Well, I'm lucky. I grew up in Switzerland, and I love math. I've always loved math, and physics, especially physics. Chemistry a little bit less, but I loved physics and math and languages, of course. But it's bizarre. Languages come, a lot of people who love math love languages as well. So I'm going back to where I went to school in Aarau. That's where Einstein went to school for a while there as well. And he is definitely, I admire him big time. I'm using people from the past right now. Marie Curie, she won 2 Nobel Peace Prize. She is the first one to win 2. And it was a woman. I mean, need to stress that, you know. It's fantastic. And she has a beautiful saying. She says, nothing is in life is to be feared. It's only to be understood. And I really can, and let's understand more, you know. And it's really she represents, she was herself. She was a strong force to be reckoned with. And anyhow, all admiration. Then Coco Chanel, she said, I I don't make fashion, I am fashion. And she was definitely a big leader as well. So I have a male leader. I love Aristotle's philosophy, Immanuel Kant, growing up reading that philosophy of Immanuel Kant. Love him too. I could go on and on. It's a lot in the past. I don't really, I look up to definitely like what Stephen Jobs did and how he went through failures because he was arrogant, and he admitted that later. And it was interesting, and he admitted his faults, but nobody, that speech at Stanford he gave to the graduates, I will never forget that. So he is definitely Bill Gates, what he does with in Africa. He's doing with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. There's a lot he does in energy as well. Anyhow, I look up to a lot of people.
Well, no, thank you. That was a very eclectic mix and some great names there, and so it's great to mention that. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Just building on that again, when you think about advice that you've received along the way, Eveline, maybe it was something that somebody said to you that stayed with you, that you still find yourself using today. Maybe it was that little bit of advice that you said, I wish I'd have learned that earlier. Or is there some advice that you find yourself passing on to others on a regular basis that you think is important for our audience to know? So when I ask you that question about the best advice, what springs to mind for you?
The best advice from my coaches way back: stay true to yourself, listen to your inner self. And one thing I would like to give on to generation Gen Z and all the other generations following, also maybe millennials, I would like to say you only need one job. When people say you will never get a job, don't ever listen to people telling you you will never get a job. You just say, I only need one.
Well, that's great.
And that's a lot. I got a lot of jobs that way.
That's great. Yeah, that's great advice. You only need one. Yeah, that's good. And I just squeeze one more quick question in as well, because you've mentioned languages a number of times, and obviously being multilingual. And I suppose you really love maths. You also talked about the correlation between people who love maths and people who love languages. What impact do you think that had on your life?
Success in business and sports. I think sports really I was always passionate about the sports I did growing up in Switzerland. There are so many sports kids are doing and getting involved in, and the skiing camps and everything. I mean, it was driven, and the athletic camps I was in, I truly enjoyed all that, and that gave me a lot together with it. I think my math focus, and it just opened up my world better. I got into economics. I think it's important to learn, take economics in school. I think we all need to know our finances, need to be able to plan ahead, have a strategy. It helped me strategize. Math really did that for me. So I would highly recommend people take economics in school, take math, study AI, become a data scientist. You don't have to be a full-fledged data scientist, just get a basic knowledge of it so you can talk to the experts, and understand the basics of it. So I think
that's so important, Eveline, because I often speak to people who say, not that I'm knocking the education systems, and they're different all over the world. They're different in different geographies and regions and cultures. But so often people say to me, I learned none of this in school. I wish I'd have learned this earlier. And I think what you're talking about is the importance of learning it, particularly now, but that lifelong learning, that love of learning. Well, I think that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, look, that brings us nicely to the end of the interview. But before we go, I want to ask you, is there anything else you'd like to share with our international audience? And also, if people want to reach out and get in touch with you, where are you sending people to? A website, LinkedIn, Twitter? Where would you like people to connect with you?
I love them to connect with me on LinkedIn. They can also connect with me. LinkedIn is excellent, and I have I have a website as well. I'm trying to really design it nicely. I stopped designing last year. I had long COVID. I couldn't even walk for 5 months. Excuse me for saying that, but anyhow, yes, people can connect with me on LinkedIn, and everything should be there. They can do it on Twitter as well. I'm at Anylev. I'm there as well. What the international global community I'd like to give is more cooperation on climate change. Climate change is big. I mean, we can have all these fabulous inventions if we don't get our energy problems in our ducks lined up on that, and get the carbon footprint reduced. We need carbon offsetting tools, which are available, and all the fabulous inventions that are happening with fusion energy, the fusion success that was just recently happening at Livermore National Lab here in the US is phenomenal. But we won't have it commercialized. That's limitless energy, clean energy, no carbon footprint. And we won't have it commercialized until maybe 15 years from now. But everything has been happening so much faster. So, the naysayers said it'll never happen. We can't prove this fusion, the energy of a sun, and it happened. It was just fantastic. But also with the metaverse, nobody ever thought it would happen that quickly. And the digital transformation is just happening very fast. So I would say, take care of our globe, come together more politically and economically, and just try to get along with each other. On a business level, on a personal level, we all need to just try to get along with each other and work towards positive goals. And otherwise we won't be able to survive on this planet. And global warming is for real.
Well, look, that's a really important note to end on. So thank you for raising those points. Yes, the Web 3.0 stroke metaverse stroke whatever we want to call it in the future is happening very quickly. Looking after the planet and the globe, as you say, is important to us here on the global discussion because we like talking about global topics. But I do want to thank you, Eveline, for joining me today. It's been a great pleasure to have you on here sharing some of your thoughts and journey with us.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure for me as well. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Eveline. And I also want to thank people for watching and listening to us today, and to ask them to like, follow, subscribe, do all the normal things you do with a podcast. We sure would appreciate it. And I do hope that you'll join us back here for some more discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers from around the world. So thank you very much indeed, Eveline. It's been a pleasure catching up with you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Simon.